Welcome to another edition of the Gruber Morning Show Tesla Roadster Edition, sponsored by the Gruber Companies.
Today we have an update on the lowest mile Roadster.
Auctions are reflecting Roadster valuations tank.
We are exciting announcement for an exotic Roadster storage facility.
And how is AI helping Roadster service? I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Mark Schaffner.
These and other stories on this Gruber Morning Show. So, one of the first things I wanted to say is we hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and holidays so far. For us, it was a lot of family time, 3 days solid, a lot of eating, and just a wonderful holidays here in Phoenix, Arizona. The weather was very cooperative as well, except for today. It's 63 degrees today, and we're all freezing here. How about you?
It's wonderful. We had a good time with the family. Spent Christmas Day with my son and family, and actually daughter and husband. A couple of granddaughters as well. Just had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Playing with the little kids and their new little puppy was really a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And then we talked earlier, Jesse was up in Durango, Colorado, elk hunting one day.
Mm-hmm. Nice and cold up there.
What was it, 10 degrees?
12.
12 degrees. Oh, much warmer, yeah. So I wanted to share something else with you guys. We've got Tesla Roadster VIN number 592 that's on the Roadster matchmaking site currently, which is the Arctic White Roadster that has literally 38 miles on the odometer, certified, confirmed. We went into the firmware and extracted it. And the other thing that's so amazing about this particular car, the Chinese Roadsters, if you remember, we thought were the lowest mileage Roadsters on Earth. We'd never again see anything like this.
That's right.
Turns out that those were just over 100 miles each because Tesla in 2010 apparently had switched over to test driving for 100 miles versus 30 miles because of some QC issues they wanted to flush out. Well, this car predates that, and it actually had about 30 miles of test driving by Tesla, and then 8 miles by the first owner, which was 8 miles to a annual preventive maintenance. They lived fairly close to the service center. And from there, the car got bricked, and it's just been sitting. And it's also been sitting in what appears to be a completely different environment than the Chinese Roadsters because it's immaculate. We did not find any evidence of deterioration. Let's talk about the image there. Okay.
Sorry, I just updated that. We're running behind from the other show.
That image is a festive Tesla Roadster image, and we asked, again, ChatGPT-4, give us something that speaks to the holidays. Did a pretty good job, I think.
It definitely did a pretty good job. That's definitely a very festive image on that Roadster.
And although those of you that understand the details on a Tesla Roadster may find some inconsistencies there, I think AI is getting better as it goes along.
Pretty close.
So getting back to this 38-mile Arctic White Roadster, which currently is being bid, and today the bid went up to $140,000.
Okay.
We're getting about one a day currently. A lot of questions regarding, is there a reserve? There is no reserve, but the seller is collecting bids at this point, and will make the final determination when, it's enough.
Yeah, this is not an auction that has an expiration date. It's the seller is posted basically a electronic version of a classified ad.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. So one of the people that bid on this, and I wanted to share this with you because we have certain preferences for where these types of cars should go. And I think he summarized that preference perfectly. And I'm going to read it to you without giving you the name, of course. He says, I'm following up on VIN 592. Any thoughts on what the buyer is thinking? Well, the thoughts are, We're just collecting bids until the seller feels comfortable with the price. And when that gets to that level, I'm sure he's going to reach out to the bidder and start some communication. At this point, 140 still seems low to me for a car that is absolutely brand new, perfect. And for those of you that don't know much about this, go to our Roadster matchmaking site, take a look at the 100 or so pictures, and take a look at the detail. Even inside the car, we removed the skid plates to expose all of the suspension components. We did the same thing with the Chinese Roadsters. And this car, absolutely brand new. There's even white tags on certain shafts that are clean and white to this day.
Yeah, this particular car simply didn't show the type of temperature variations that the Chinese Roadsters had. They were wonderful cars that had never been driven, but they were in storage containers. And so they would, on a daily basis, especially in the summertime, they get up to 130 or 140 degrees in there. In the wintertime, the Chinese Roadsters would get possibly down into the 20s or so. This car was garage stored, and if I understand correctly, that garage was itself environmentally controlled.
We believe so, yes. So continuing here with what this potential buyer is describing with this car. He said, for what it's worth, I am a former Tesla employee. I started in 2012 as part of the Model S launch program and then worked there in a number of capacities before retiring from Tesla and the corporate life in general in the summer of 2019. As one of the early Tesla employees who helped Tesla grow from a small startup to the global powerhouse it is today, I view this Tesla Roadster as not only part of Tesla's legacy, but part of my personal legacy as well. It would be my great honor to be its steward and preserve it as the icon that it is for this generation and generations to come. Now, this may sound like sentimental drivel, but I want both you and the owner of VIN 592 to know that the car would have a true guardian in me. And he continues, my plans for it would be to loan it to a reputable automobile museum for maximum exposure, care, and preservation. What I would really like to do is to have it on display at one of Tesla's flagship showroom locations. Kind of what we've been saying all along, right? If I am fortunate enough to acquire VIN 592, I would advocate with Tesla, with the Tesla real estate team, to incorporate VIN 592 into a prominent display in the showroom. I envision it on a 3-foot plexiglass platform with mirrors on the floor underneath to showcase both its pristine body and pristine undercarriage. So there you have it. That, in my mind, is the ideal buyer for a car like this.
I think he might have been listening to some of your prior rants, actually.
That could be.
What a cool idea that would be, whether it's to loan to a museum or even to get it into a Tesla showroom. And he's right. If there's any car that is worthy of this type of attention, it would be this one.
Yeah. And, like we said with the 3 Chinese Roadsters, we don't think anything like this will ever come along again. And here 592 shows up.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to make that prediction. Maybe there's yet another one that's lower than 38 miles. But in the meantime, folks, if you're interested in getting an icon and a highly collectible car, this is your chance to actually pull that trigger and take this one off the market. We've had other customers that ask, can it be put back on the road? Well, most certainly. If you look at the pictures, the wiring harnesses are intact. Suspension components look brand new. The only thing this car needs is a propulsion battery pack, the ESS battery pack, which can be purchased from Tesla as a 3.0 upgrade for $40,000 plus tax. So for about $45,000, this car could be made operational again.
I'm sure we would probably recommend at least a review, if not a rebuild of the PEM module, simply because lack of use does not mean that the capacitors and components in the PEM do not wear over time. Those capacitors are oil filled, and that oil gets that very slowly evaporates and gets sticky over time.
Yeah. So yes, there are other deferred maintenance items one could resolve, but if the goal was to just strictly make it operational, again, a car like this won't be driven. And if it is driven, every time you take it out, you're going to lose tens of thousands of dollars in valuation. It can be done. But again, if you're looking for a driver Roadster, my God, go to our Tesla Roadster matchmaking site. There are 30, 40, 50 of them out there now, I think. Many cars to choose from. All right, so the auctions, Bring a Trailer, for example, and even Haggerty are getting into the game. There are Roadsters that are selling. And here's a good example. If we can bring up a picture here, guys. I think I have this out here. No, I do not. All right, well, let me tell you about it then. The 43,000-mile 2008 Tesla Roadster that just sold on Bring a Trailer. And I'll give you a VIN here. No, I don't have it. All right. The selling price, and this was a no reserve auction, $73,500 for a fully functioning Roadster that allegedly was in excellent condition. It had one scuff on one of the running board, on the sill, and again, a 2008 Roadster, fully functional, $69,420 is what it ended up. No, I'm sorry, $73,500. Now, of course, the price to the buyer is higher than that.
Sure.
A few $1,000s higher than that, actually, because that's where Bring a Trailer generates their revenue, is by charging the buyers of the vehicles. In my estimation, way too low. This same car was on our matchmaking site prior to the Bring a Trailer, auction. The customer originally asked us to list it for $120,000 and then dropped it to $110,000. Well, if I had known that he was willing to let it go for $73,500, it would have sold immediately on our site with 420 pre-qualified Roadster buyers getting this information. I can't imagine that somebody wouldn't have pulled this trigger right away.
Well, even if you had gone to the people and said, "Hey, we're going to open up bidding on this particular car at $70,000," once the buyer gets to a number that he likes, or the bid starts to slow down, the buyer will decide that when he wants to sell it. I think he would have gone way above $73,500.
Yeah. So there is yet another Bring a Trailer Roadster. These must be people that don't know about us, is what I'm thinking. And this one is a 25,000-mile 2008 Roadster. It's VIN number 136. The current bid on it is $69,420, and it's got 1 day to go. The question was, and in the auctions you have a lot of people chiming in, we need the CAC, the calculated amp hour capacity. Please post that. Well, I watched that for a day or so. There was no response, so I sent a link to our Tesla Roadster newsletter section, where we've got a newsletter that says how to pull your CAC. Takes you through all the details on how to do that. And that was Saturday when I sent that. There's still no answer to that. So we don't know the calculated amp hour capacity yet. But I can tell you who the seller is. And let me get to that section here. It is Zach Nelson. Zach Nelson is a famous influencer on YouTube. Over 1 million subscribers, I believe. Fairly popular. And he goes under Jerry Rig Everything on YouTube. He creates a lot of cool things, but one of his creations is what he calls a not wheelchair for his wife, who's a paraplegic. Apparently, there was an equestrian accident years ago, and he created for her something that looks like a wheelchair but is not. And apparently, this is 2 electric bikes with a seat in the center that are grafted together which allows her to really get around. The top speed on this thing was 20 kilometers per hour. That's pretty fast for a wheelchair,
Oh,
Think about
yeah.
it.
I mean, miles per hour, it's about 14 or 15 miles an hour. So that's pretty good speed.
And it's got a range of 15.
Got a video of it.
Oh, you do? Cool. Let's bring that up. So anyway, Zach is selling this. There he is, and that's his wife. The wife's name is Cambry, and Cambry Kaler. Is there maybe a video of this thing actually in motion? There you go. Look at that.
Oh, look at that.
And that, folks, is what he makes in a shop up in Utah. The Tesla Roadster apparently at this point is being sold, and it's on Bring a Trailer. The rest of the details here are that his wife, Cambry, realized that her new high-tech wheelchair was comfortable and effective in off-road adventures. So Zach continued to embellish and improve the rig, and today they apparently have a not wheelchair business, and other people that are in this position are buying these and mass producing this not a wheelchair.
I have heard one of the larger things that a person who becomes disabled, paraplegic or quadriplegic, has to struggle with is the stigma of the traditional wheelchair, whether it's the battery operated cart or the hand push wheelchair. What you have there does not look like a wheelchair. So I applaud them for doing something like that. That will both break, it enhances her abilities to get around, and it breaks down barriers that do otherwise get set up sometimes.
And Zach, if you're listening, feel free to give us a call. We'll walk you through that CAC reading, how to extract it, what it means, and why it's important to potential buyers. But if you can put that out there, that will definitely improve the sale of this this Tesla Roadster. And again, it's a 25,000 mile, 2008. It is a radiant red Roadster, and it would be shipping out of Utah, we believe, once it sells on Bring a Trailer, and it's got like a day left to go, so it is imminent. We certainly hope that these Roadsters begin to climb in value again, and that it gets beyond that 70,000 threshold where it's sitting right now.
Definitely. On YouTube, William R. has joined us this morning. He says, Merry Christmas from Tofino, British Columbia. So good morning and Merry Christmas to you.
Welcome. Yes, welcome. And let us know, as always, where you're coming in from. That's always interesting to the rest of our viewers.
Yes, and also on YouTube, Crunch to Grace Hopper, like number 4 from Newport Beach, SoCal. He says he'll be caught up soon. Last week, you got me thinking of getting an original Roadster instead of a second Cybertruck. Hope to contact you about candidates. Smash that thumb, y'all.
Be my recommendation, too. The Cybertruck will always be available. These OG Roadsters, when they go collectible again, a lot of people aren't going to be able to touch them anymore.
That's true.
Got a picture to pop up here, guys. It's called Gulping Electrons. Found this one humorous and quite timely. We get brick Tesla Roadsters in all the time, and we actually got 2 the same day. This lightning green Roadster that we're going to pop up here shortly came in, and we immediately put these cars on life support, and we begin a level 1 recovery. What a level 1 entails is trickle charging the main battery pack across all the sheets to 400 volts. And when a Tesla Roadster gets bricked, what happens is the voltage threshold gets low enough to where the battery safety management systems in the Roadster will not allow a charge anymore. And when that happens, there isn't anything that you as an owner can do to change that, unless you have equipment like ours and you know where to tap in and how to do a trickle charge. So there were 2 of them that came in. This lightning green was put on life support first thing in the morning, trickled, and by the time we came in the next day, it had trickled up enough to where we had the voltage we needed across all the sheets to attempt a Tesla Roadster charge port charge. And we're always excited when this happens because when you open the charge port door, the first indication is a white light. Then you plug in your charge cable, it goes to blue, and then you wait for the pre-charge circuit to start a couple of clicks where it's actually synchronizing voltages. And once those contactors click the second time, then we look for a pulsing orange or amber glow. And this one started that glow. The other thing that we found humorous here was the firmware guys definitely had some fun with this. When the state of charge is extremely low, the rate of amber glow flashing is extremely rapid. And it just reminded us of a Roadster now gulping electrons because it has been starved for so long.
Oh, sure.
So that's what we posted out on Facebook. The second Roadster that came in isn't quite as fortunate. I was watching it all weekend. I was going into the office every day, actually, first thing in the morning for a while. And that one is still struggling. It looks like that one may have a sheet or possibly two where there are bricks that just aren't coming up. Now, we'll attempt to do the cell, replace or the cell removal from circuit. But so it's always interesting how some of them come in and they do quite well, and then others, they struggle a bit, but we eventually get them running.
This is always such a fun success story to hear, too, because so many times our guys are used to seeing a car come in and they know that it's going to be anywhere from several days to several weeks before they're able to get it going. To see a car come in and then the very next day it's taking a charge just has to be such good news to people.
Yeah. And of course, we don't just simply let them sit when they come in and, decline. We immediately put them onto life support, as we call it, which is either charging a brick, which is one of 99 collection of cells, or charging the entire pack, or a sheet. And that gives us time then before the Roadster goes on the lift for surgery. And oftentimes it requires a battery pull, and then we go inside and fix what's wrong.
Right.
Looks like Ramon Hurd is chiming in. If given the choice, what would you rather have, an original Roadster or the new one when it comes out? Can I say both?
I think that's fair. I think
right.
that's fair. And for me, given the choice, I would probably choose the new Roadster.
Maybe they have more room in that.
That's the reason why. I'm a bigger guy. I'm a taller guy. I've been in and out of the original Roadster. It's hard to get in and out of for me. And so as a result, I would give that new Roadster a chance.
The other thing with the new Roadster is when it first was announced, it was the fastest production car on Earth based on the specifications.
Right.
Today, that's no longer the case. I mean, even Tesla outdid themselves with the Plaid, which is under 2 seconds as well, the 0 to 60. And then, of course, you have all the other really cool ones coming out. The Rimac, you've got the Lotus Evija. These are awesome electric cars. And, I'm more of, personally, I like the styling that Lamborghini introduced, the wedge shape, the scoops on the side. You remember in the 70s, 80s when the Countaches came out? Those looked like spaceships. They had giant scoops on the sides, mind you, And the new Tesla Roadster looks very sedate in that category. It has the lines and curves of a Model S. You can tell the design team that, came up with that. It just doesn't speak fastest production car in the world. Look at a Pagani, for example. The gigantic pipes coming out of the back. Even the new Corvette that's coming out, very angular design.
Yep.
So I think if I was going to want something that's the fastest thing on the planet, fastest production car on the planet, it would need to look that part for me as well.
Sure.
So OG Roadster for me then, I guess. I've talked myself out of it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And it's, and I remember back when the first announcement came out, and we had some conversations about this too. would it be even possible for this to happen? Because people were talking about tire technology is just not there. Your tires are going to get shredded before they ever, can get the traction to get you started in order to get a sub 2 second time. And now that obviously that has all that entire argument is false, because it's been proven with a couple of different models of cars that sub 2 second 0 to 60 times are possible with current tire technology.
It's amazing when you think about it, to get that much grip and traction to do a 0 to 60 in those kinds of numbers requires a amazing technology in the tires.
It does.
In the old days at the drag strips, we used to have Mickey Thompson slicks, and they were pretty sticky tires. But even those would not be able to handle that kind of acceleration and that kind of 0 to 60.
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of the car and its traction control, as well as the better technology in the tires themselves.
Totally. There's a Facebook post.
Yes, we do. Odion. Thank you. I'm interested in working with you, he says. A good team you've put up.
ev@gruber.com is where to send your resume, sir.
And then on YouTube, Ramon Hurt. The new Roadster will be the first Roadster that was actually styled by Tesla. Lotus designed the original. That's a good point.
Very good point. And of course, Lotus at the time had decades of experience designing sports cars. So yeah, that's. I would have thought that they might have stayed with some of the original Tesla Roadster OG DNA with the new Roadster, but it really does. If you look at the Tesla Model S and the new Roadster side by side, it looks like it's a little brother.
It really does. Yeah, I agree with you there.
Now, 3.0 packs. This is another question that comes up often, and I see a lot of discussion about that. This is the replacement pack for the Tesla Roadster, for the OG Roadster. They are available, of course. There were two versions. One came out in 2016, which was halted due to some concerns. And then in 2020, 2021, the new version came out, which is also an 80 kW pack. And they are hand building these. So initially, they were in very short supply. People ended up waiting a year, 2 or 3 for their packs. And then Tesla did something that made sense. They said, we're not going to allow any elective battery pack replacements. These people have cars that are running. We have cars that are brick that are sitting idle. Let's favor the cars that are dead, or VOR as they call them, vehicle off-road. And that began to change things. Now they were able to catch up. They were able to get cars back on the road, and those that had cars that they wanted to upgrade but were running had to wait, and still are. There was one car in New Jersey, actually, that surprisingly the customer was contacted. He had a running car, and apparently Tesla made an error in their status, thinking that his car was bricked. It was not, and I checked with them immediately. I said, have you lifted that restriction now, that you're now allowing elective battery replacements? And they said, nope, that was an error. We're still only doing cars that are off the road or bricked. But those packs are available. They are hand-built. We've been told that they are increasing production slightly, and that the lead times continue to decrease modestly. I guess those would be the right words. How long do you have to wait, it seems? Depends on the service center as well. That's another consideration. And we have had great success, actually, with the Tempe, Arizona Service Center. I think we have a car in play there on any given point continuously. And then they come back, they go back to the customers or get their deferred maintenance taken care of. So we've got a very active service center here that is keeping up to date with their commitments to get these packs replaced.
That Tempe Service Center has been a great partner for us for this. And I think it helps Tesla too, because now a lot of the battery packs are getting funneled into one service center for people that are obviously working with us. And they get, with that inordinate number of battery pack replacements, they have gotten better and faster at doing it as well.
Yeah, they are. Well, and that comes with, any kind of activity. The more you do it, the better you get. And they are becoming very, they're changing these rapidly. They're also resolving the problems rapidly. When you do a pack swap like this, it doesn't always come up running perfectly. In fact, the reason that these cars oftentimes got bricked was because there was a technical problem. It wasn't just because the body shop that you took it to didn't plug it in and bricked it, or you forgot to charge it. Oftentimes there was a problem in the car that now has to be resolved, that the battery pack has been replaced.
That's very true. Ramon Hurt on YouTube has another question for us. He says, could you guys convert the ICE Lotus to an EV?
Anything like that can be done. There are a lot of companies that are making aftermarket conversions, ICE to EV. It gets very costly, and it can be done. We don't do it because we're so busy just keeping Roadsters running and doing the engineering to keep them running and fixing the electronics. But if we had the time, it would be a fun project to do EV conversions from ICE vehicles. And there's going to be, of course, a whole huge market, especially as we get closer to those deadlines where you can't, they're not going to be making any more ICE vehicles. And eventually, we believe, they're going to ban these things from being on public roads because global warming, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but I'll bet my granddaughters will see this in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm. All right, I've got an article here I wanted to share with you, and this is one that was written by a Tesla employee many years ago from Current Automotive, the co-founder, Senecca Guiss. Senecca worked for Tesla from 2009 to 2018, and his first role was selling Roadsters. He spent more than 30,000 miles behind the wheel of various Roadsters. He's a real expert on the car, and he gives excellent advice. I've talked to customers, for example, that said, yeah, I bought my Roadster from Senecca. So he's well known in the community. But he wrote a really cool article that I wanted to share with you, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth between the comments and this particular article, which provides sort of an in-depth, background on the Tesla Roadsters. It looks like Niels is joining in. He says, is your Roadster work at a peak? And once you're working through them all, more time will be available for Model 3s or the other platforms. We are not backlogged on Tesla Roadsters because those take priority. Where we're backlogged is on the Model S's, on the battery problems. We're out like 9 months.
Right. The Model S's we're out about 9 months on. We don't see a lot of Model 3s yet because the Model 3s are not yet coming off a warranty. That's really going to start happening in 2024, and it will be around the end of 2024 and 2025 when we start to see the Model 3s come in. That is an impending tidal wave, I think, but we're getting ready for it.
And with the Tesla Roadster, the majority of them are repairs that can be done fairly easily and quickly. And then there are some that just are a bear because it wasn't a car that was really meant to be serviced. Problems in the ESS pack, problems in the electronics. But for the majority of the time, we get through the Roadsters fairly quickly.
Pete?
Yeah.
Question for you. What do you see for the future of Roadster repair specifically, and maybe I guess even Model S and 3, but more specifically how it impacts us for Roadster now that all of the information has been released?
The information that's released, by the way, that's one of the talking points here, is that we have a Roadster GPT. That I used it this morning, over the weekend actually, had a customer that had a particular error code. It makes it easier to service, but it's still not the type of assistance that an owner could utilize to repair their own car. It points you at a certain portion in the electronics, for example. For example, if it says like this, in this particular case, you got a switch pack problem. Well, now what? You can't buy the switch pack from Tesla. Can you repair it yourself? Well, yes, if you have an electronics lab and you've reverse engineered it and you have schematics that you've developed and test point data, then you can repair that switch pack.
So what about other shops, though? So let's say the 9 months were backed out on Model S's. You think that would be this information that's out there, because they did the same for the Model 3, the Model Y, the Model X, and even the Cybertruck. They released all of the same information. Do you think that's going to enable other shops to come up to speed?
Very much so. In fact, there is a group of other shops, as you call them, that are coming up to speed very nicely. They're highly competent. And let's not forget, a Tesla Roadster, where no parts have been made since 2008, is a completely different repair than a Tesla Model S, where you can go to dismantlers or auctions and buy all the parts that you need, or even Tesla in some cases.
Yeah.
You don't have to do reverse engineering, component level troubleshooting. If you have a bad DC to DC converter, you just go on eBay and you buy one for $200 to $300 and you're set. Charger, the same thing. These other shops are getting good at repairing battery issues. They're learning how to open them up. They're learning how to replace modules. They're not quite isolating resistive cells yet, but you don't have to. If you have plenty of modules to swap out, you swap the entire thing.
Quick shout out to Fine Tools as well. They've been making their rounds into other places. We've seen them on Sandy's channel and a couple other YouTube channels.
And we find that the company's migrating into this, like Paul, for example. He repaired forklifts for years. He's doing an excellent job repairing Tesla Model S battery packs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not concerned about the later generation Teslas. It's the Tesla Roadster that's more of a challenge. And there are a number of things that are occurring. As these cars age, you have predictable problem areas, like suspension now with Tesla Roadsters. I don't think we've gotten a Tesla Roadster in within the last year or so that doesn't need suspension work of some type, whether it's shocks, whether it's bushings, whether it's, the control arms. And those are predictable wear items. Now the electronics, the same thing. We're seeing a rash of switch pack errors. The switch pack is a little module that sits underneath the driver's side dash, gets a lot of that heat, and it's full of MOSFETs and discrete components, even has a PIC processor on it. And, years of exposure to that kind of temperature cycling is now beginning to make some components fail on this board. So one of the things that we're working on currently is we have a tester load bank that will replicate what's going on in the car for a module that's been pulled out of a car that needs repair. And we're also doing an upgrade path for these so that these predictable wear components in this module will be replaced as part of a kind of like we do with PEM rebuilds. Yeah, there you go.
You'll be happy to know. I just, because I wanted to see if I could pull up an image for you of the switch pack. I searched Tesla Roadster switch pack on Google, and we were the first one that came up, which is nice.
That's a
is
good
very
thing.
nice, yes. And there they are. Those are the switch packs, and you can see what's inside. And there's Ken, our chief engineer, working on one of those. You can see he's got a picture of it up on his screen. And he was also one of the ones instrumental in doing a lot of the reverse engineering to create schematics. You may ask, well, why, if Tesla shared all of this, why didn't they share schematics? Well, some of the stuff they didn't have anymore. What they did have, they shared. All right. YouTube, Easy EV says, hello from Deep Cove on Vancouver Island. We've got one of your cars here right now, Tesla Roadster. He says, I saw the new Roadster at the 2019 investor meeting in Palo Alto. It was beautiful, but I'll still keep my Cybertruck reservation. Tough decision, though.
Definitely.
Good point.
Highlander on YouTube has joined us this morning and says, my brother and I are converting an old red Fiat convertible using an electric fork truck motor. We will email pictures to folks of the convertible's conversion. Highlander, please send us some of those pictures as well. We'd love to see that.
And a conversion like that won't be as complex as a Tesla Roadster, which takes DC and converts it to three-phase AC.
Yes.
Because this is a DC motor out of this electric fork truck or golf cart or whatever you get where you get your DC motor from. So it'll be some hefty switching devices, but other than that, it won't have quite the same complexity.
Instagram, Carlos Dostoko says, in which city are you located? We are located in Phoenix, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And then TikTok, Jin7155. What do you think of the new batteries in the truck? And I think he's assuming that's the Cybertruck.
Probably. You know, we haven't seen those yet, and they typically don't come in until they're out of warranty.
Right.
So, yeah, we're excited about receiving one, and what we'll initially do is, in order to service anything like this, a lot of reverse engineering will take place.
Definitely will.
YouTube, Tim Gruber, that sounds like my firstborn son is chiming in. He says, season's greetings and best wishes for a prosperous new year. Very informative podcast, by the way. Well, thank you for joining us, Tim. Yeah.
And then YouTube Highlander again says, I'm very concerned about owners working on their own electric vehicles. As you know, I've got 40 years in the field.
You know, it's, I think that most EV owners are not going to tackle their own repairs. There are some few brave souls, but remember, their resources are very limited. When you work on your ICE engine in your backyard, you can easily go down to AutoZone, Checker Auto, O'Reilly's, and get all the parts that you need.
Right.
You can go online and you can get all kinds of data about how to do certain types of procedures and repairs. But with EVs, it's still a very new technology, so I don't see too many people being brave enough to handle that.
Yeah, I don't see it happening possibly for a long time, and I'm not sure I will ever see where consumers will be given an opportunity to delve into things like the high voltage battery pack.
Right. So getting back to Senecca Guiss's article that he wrote years ago, actually, very knowledgeable ex-Tesla employee. He said Tesla's first car had to be an exclusive, pricey, limited production sports car. And the reason for sports car being added there is that's what Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning wanted to create.
Right.
An electric sports, not an electric sedan, mind you. That's why they went to Lotus. The other auto manufacturers wouldn't play ball the same way. Then he says auto manufacturing relies on high volume production to keep costs low, but it takes a lot of cash to build the factories needed to build high-volume cars. Tesla did not have access to that kind of cash as a startup in the 2000s, so it went low volume, built the Roadster, and bought somebody else's body, basically, if they had to buy or create the body panels and the frame. Mm-hmm. Tesla would not exist today. That's a very expensive proposition. So they went to a manufacturer that had already reached scale of economies with the Lotus Elise and bought some of their car bodies from them. So they went low volume, he says, built the Roadster, and used that success to pave the way for the high volume models that we know and love today. Unfortunately, he says only 2,500, it was actually 2412 Roadsters were produced. They are rare enough that not many Tesla fans will have an opportunity to get up close and personal with one. The Roadster, he says, is a great car with some clever engineering and a lot of interesting features, including some that foreshadow the future of Tesla's technology.
I would totally agree with that.
Now, Current Automotive is where Senecca worked for a number of years, and I don't know what he's doing now. I know he's a pilot, and you see images of him on Facebook once in a while piloting aircraft. He says that the earliest Tesla Roadsters had all of their body panels, including the bumpers, built out of carbon fiber. This expensive ultralight material was crucial for maximizing the range and counteracting extra weight from the battery pack. It's about 1,000 pounds, by the way, for the Tesla Roadster battery pack. In a Lotus Elise, which weighed 1,700 pounds. So you can begin to understand the issues there. He says Tesla was able to improve battery technology and use less carbon fiber, increasing the range while reducing costs. All Tesla Roadsters came with a soft top that could be rolled up and placed into a surprisingly spacious trunk. The car's electric architecture is also beneath the rear lid, and what he's talking about there is what's called the PEM, or the Power Electronics Module, which is the three-phase inverter that converts all of that DC to three-phase AC. Now you may ask, why didn't they do what was suggested earlier, is get a forklift DC motor, a large DC motor, and go DC to DC? Well, it turns out that despite a conversion from DC to AC in an inverter, a three-phase AC induction motor, which it's what it's powering, is actually more efficient than a DC motor path. And it allows for regenerative braking, which is also very important in EVs because you're scavenging your braking now and charging the battery.
Yeah, literally scavenging the energy that's being expended to slow down the car.
Yep. He says the Roadster's battery pack does not sit underneath the floor of the car, as is common with all newer electric vehicle platforms. The battery instead sits behind the occupant's back vertically from the floor of the car up to the top. Underneath the housing, the pack is divided into 11 sheets with 621 cells in each sheet. Behind the battery pack is the power electronics module, which is akin to the brain of the car or the three-phase inverter. And that's what converts DC to AC. To the right of both of these units is a coolant reservoir that cycles liquid coolant through the battery pack and other onboard electronics. The Tesla vehicles are always tracking, the Tesla Roadster vehicles are always tracking battery pack temperature, even when the car is parked or on standby. If needed, the computer will turn on the cooling system to keep the pack from overheating while parked. By cooling system, we're talking about HVAC.
Right.
You can actually hear the coolant circulating in the Roadster if the car is parked in a quiet place. We get a lot of owners when summer's here. They say, my car is making a buzzing noise, a humming noise. What is that? Well, that's the 12-volt DC motor coolant pump that's continuously maintaining temperature in the battery pack. And it's pumping glycol or coolant through those through the cooling systems. They say he says, sadly, the Roadster is a little too small for a frunk. That's the front trunk, of course. More electronics are placed underneath the forward opening carbon fiber front hood, underneath the hood vanes, including there's an AC condenser fan, 2 fans, actually. There's a power brake booster. He doesn't mention it here, but the HVAC controllers are under there as well, along with a heater box, and an emergency line first responder cut to make the car safe if they're responding to an accident. It looks like Ramon is chiming in.
Yeah, we have another comment from Ramon Hurd on YouTube. It says the equipment needed to actually take apart a battery pack and test it is extremely expensive, not to mention the software that's going to be needed to do the testing. Yeah, Ramon, those are good reasons that your weekend warrior type of mechanic, do it yourself at home, is not going to be getting into batteries anytime soon.
And, you know, the Tesla Roadster was not meant to be serviced. We freely admit that. It was a prototype. It was released before its time. And just to get the 1,000-pound battery pack out requires a lot of plumbing disconnects. It requires understructure disconnects, some suspension type removals. It is not for the faint of heart. And then finally, once you have all of this stuff disconnected, how are you going to handle a 1,000-pound battery pack?
Yeah.
So it's not something you're going to do in your backyard laying on your back. Like one time I changed my 4-speed and my 69 Plymouth Roadrunner with a Hurst shifter, and I laid it on my chest. I was on a creeper and then just simply got out and laid it off to its side, and I was able to repair my 4-speed tranny. You can't do that with a 1,000-pound battery pack. It would crush you.
No, not at all. Highlander on YouTube also has another reply for us. He says, we're doing the conversion, cheap and dirty, Pete, LOL.
Yeah, that makes sense, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
And then Smuggler on TikTok has sent us a gift as well. So thank you, Smuggler, and welcome to the podcast.
So then Senecca goes on. He talks about the Tesla Roadster charging. He says Roadsters use a unique 4-pin charging connector. Now remember, this is way before NACS.
Right.
As the car was designed before the J1772 charging standard was released, and that was really quite an elegant design back in its day, especially compared to the Roadster charge connector.
Oh, definitely.
It's about the size of a Coke can. actually a little bit larger, very bulky, very large. We service them here, and usually there are a lot of F-bombs being dropped while we're taking those apart because it was I don't know what the engineers were thinking. It was kind of a head shaker, but they are repairable, and they're just not as easy as some of the other types of connectors that we work on or take apart. He says the connector is big and bulky with heavy gauge wires and connector housings for safety. He says, I saw a couple of revisions over the 4-year production life of the Roadster, and it became smaller and lighter each time. So I can only imagine what we have currently is fairly large and bulky. There were even larger ones, it sounds like, at one point in time.
Yeah, I think there were. And it is important to remember the Tesla Roadster, it's not just a prototype of a Tesla. It was to prove that the concept of electric vehicles could work at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because before the Roadster, there were no electric vehicles on the road that were out there driving and were being taken seriously.
Right. And, much of the innovation goes to someone whose name isn't normally bantied about, and that was Al Caccione with AC Propulsion Systems.
Absolutely.
With the T0, there was some remarkable designs that are still being used today, like regenerative braking, for example.
Mm-hmm.
He actually incorporated variable regen. I remember there was a potentiometer, and when I drove that thing, when you dialed the regen to max, that thing was almost like you're putting your brakes on, when you took your foot off the accelerator. And at that time, of course, your battery's being charged.
Right. Well, that was the precursor to what is now commonly called one-pedal driving.
Yeah, exactly.
And some electric vehicles are more aggressive than others, I've learned over time. And like our little Volvo XC40, I was driving it again this weekend. It was different. It was kind of fun to drive, and sure enough, you take your foot off the accelerator, not a gas pedal anymore, and the car is slowing down actively, and it's braking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty cool.
So anyway, Senecca continues here. He says, inside the car, 4 charging modes are accessible on the vehicle display screen. It's a small screen in the center of the car that feels like a prototype of the big screens to come in the future of Tesla vehicles. I was going to bring one, but the screen is essentially this large, about 3 inches by 4 inches. Kind of like a iPod, right? It's not iPad, but iPod. It was that small.
Yes.
But he's right. It was a precursor to the whole notion of why not display information about the car on a screen in the car. He says that there were these 4 modes, or storage mode, which holds the state of charge at about 40% and manages battery temperatures to almost eliminate battery degradation. Roadsters going any extended period of time without being driven should be set in this mode. Well, I'm going to clarify that. In practice, storage mode should not be used. We have found more Roadsters that were bricked because the customer was using storage mode, went on vacation for a couple of weeks, a circuit breaker tripped while they were gone, no OVMS, no indication, and when they got back, their Roadster was bricked. Because the distance from storage mode state of charge to bricked is very brief and short.
Yeah, I know he talks about 40% in here. We have heard from other sources that it's more like 25, though.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, that's a very generous percentage. Then standard mode. He describes that it charges the battery to 90%, leaving the remaining 10% empty. It also keeps the bottom 10% in reserve, allowing the driver a usable capacity of 80%. This lower intensity charging cycle reduces battery degradation in comparison to a full charge. This is the best mode to use for regularly driven Roadsters. And then, of course, you have range mode, where you get a full charge, and it opens up the top and bottom 10%. There's a lot of conjecture about should you charge 18650 cells to 100%, and the information continues to flip-flop.
Yes, it does.
We're not going to weigh in anymore because it used to be that you don't want to do full range charges on an 18650 lithium ion cell. LFP, or lithium iron phosphate, yes, you can. Our suggestion is just use standard mode. Do that
Yeah.
80 to 90% charge.
Yeah, that seems it's the most conservative and seems to be the best. Before we go further, let's we're getting close on time, so we've got a few questions still. Ramon Hurd on YouTube asks, "Are you guys interested in any other collectible EVs?"
Well, the only ones that I'm familiar with that fit that category are the cars from 100 years ago or more, the old Bakers,
Yeah.
the taxi cabs from New York. They look like Model Ts, basically. They're your carriage-style EVs. If we had a lot of room here, I think it would be fun to collect some of these legacy EV vehicles and restore them and learn how they operate. But, being we're as busy as we are, I have no interest in those older vehicles at this point.
Not yet, but other. I realize we might be switching gears a little bit here, but we do have that storage facility that's going to be opening up soon.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that here in a moment and show you some pictures.
Yeah.
But anyway, wrapping up Senecca Guiss's discussion here, he says, additionally, you can configure your scheduled charging to take advantage of cheaper electricity rates, which is charging at off-peak usage times. And that capability is also very common in most electric vehicles because it helps reduce your electricity bill.
Mm-hmm.
All right. See if there's anything else with Seneca's. Let's talk about the speedometer and the instrument cluster. He says, unlike later Tesla vehicles, the Roadster does feature a traditional gauge cluster. There were two versions of the gauge cluster over the years. The first one is the 1.5 version Roadster, and that's Roadster's VIN 500 down to 1. They had a separate tachometer and speedometer. A lot of people ask, well, why does it need a tachometer? Well, the original two-speed gearbox that was planned for the Roadster would have required a tachometer because you're shifting.
Sure.
It turns out that was a unsuccessful experiment using a Magna Technologies gearbox. They were burning up clutch plates. There was just too much torque in the Tesla Roadster motor. So they eventually went to Borg Warner and said, we need a gearbox that will handle the torque. They said, well, one speed is the only way to do it. Since your motor is good for 14,000 RPMs, let's give you a single-speed gearbox. So there is no transmission in a Tesla Roadster. There's what's called a transaxle that converts the rotational momentum from the AC, three-phase AC induction motor to the half shafts going to the wheels.
Okay.
On the Roadster 2.x versions now this is VIN's 501 on up, the tachometer is doubled up with the speedometer, since the Roadster's single-speed transmission setup means that motor RPM tracks constantly with speed. 0 RPM equals 0 miles per hour. And while 14,000 RPMs is a red line at Roadsters, top speed of 125 miles an hour. People are generally impressed when they ask about the Roadsters that we were driving. What's the 0 to 60? What kind of performance? Well, it's 3.7 or 3.9 seconds. And the next statement is, wow, assuming that now it has an incredible top speed.
Yeah.
Well, the top speed is no different than your grocery getter sedan, 125 miles an hour. Because you don't have any gearing to utilize, and you can't go faster than 14,000 RPM, at least on the Roadster design motor. All right. Next to the speed tachometer now, replacing the original separate tachometer, is a unique power meter. And this is what tracks how much energy is being discharged to drive or recharged back to the pack during regen braking. Literally, you've got a needle, and it sits in the middle when nothing is taking place. When you're consuming energy, it is actually going to the right, and you can bury it down to 200 kW. Mm-hmm. If it's going to the left, my left, then you are charging your battery, regenerative braking. All right, a few more questions, and then we can get to the storage facility.
Yes. Instagram, Tenacious Turtley. Why do you wear shades? Please address this straight once and for all.
Once and for all. As much as I would love to do the reveal in this podcast right now, we cannot, because we are working on a video release that is going to tell the whole world why there are always sunglasses involved in any Gruber video production. And it's worth waiting for. We have a number of theories. One, we're aliens and our eyes glow red, and we would reveal ourselves as being artificial intelligence if we were to take these shades off. Another one is the future is always bright here,
Yes.
and we need the shades.
Yes. We've heard the more mundane ones too. You're tired, you're drunk, or you have red eyes for some other reason.
Or you were smoking weed before the podcast and you're
Yes.
trying to hide the red eyes. The best one, though, and I say this often, is when somebody said during or commenting on our video, and I'm walking around the shop area with my sunglasses, he says, man, he sure does move fast for a blind man. So stay tuned, Tenacious Turtley. It will eventually be it will be revealed. And what we suggest is wear your own sunglasses. Watch our podcast with the sunglasses, and always remember that sunglasses have a coolness factor. There's a coolness vibe. Remember the Blues Brothers,
Absolutely.
rock stars. You know. So anyway, that's the kind of vibe that we're going for here as well.
You know, R.C. Robinson San on YouTube just replied to this. He says it's because the future is bright.
Right. Upvoted. There you
Upvoted.
go. TikTok BMX Street Crew says, is a small generator a safe way to charge a battery if it runs low? Yes. Yeah, very much so. It takes a long time, but, you know, your car, when it runs low, is looking for electrons, and how you deliver that is irrelevant.
Right. If a small generator is going to be able to give you maybe 1,200 watts, 15 amps at 120 volts, that's the car will take it and it'll drink it up. It won't care.
And then finally, Instagram, Ali Youssef 91, we want more videos about repairing. And, you know, you're right. We want them too. Our social media team is constantly busy and tasked with many different tasks. We are actually hiring someone new this week, so that will help a bit. But in the meantime, the goal is to create tutorial videos, to create the type of videos that will allow other EV repair shops to gain some of our expertise and our experience. Tap into that.
By all means.
All right. Now, if we can bring up a picture here, guys, let's start with picture number 3. This is one of our commercial buildings. We have 7 of them here in the compound. And this particular building went through a fire over 2 years ago. It is being completely rebuilt, and instead of rebuilding it into the Gruber Motor Company Service Center, which we now have twice the size of the original, we are converting this original service center into an exotic car storage facility. And what we mean by that is, you're probably familiar with the exotic cars that get stored at a place separate than someone's garage because they require specialized maintenance. They require, a temperature, humidity controlled environment, and or the collection is so large that they simply don't have enough space. We are creating the world's first EV exotic car storage facility. It will be housing Tesla Roadsters, which are going collectible and will continue to go collectible. And the reason we felt it was important to create a storage facility for Tesla Roadsters is because EV storage type places, or the ones that are accepting EVs, typically aren't doing that well or that great a job with them. I'll give you some examples. In the Bay Area years ago, a consignment facility took in three Tesla Roadsters. They bricked all 3 of them within less than a year. They came to us, we repaired them, put some back on the road.
Right.
A museum in Germany, Munich, Germany, took the World Traveling Roadster at the time. This is a car that went around the world completely in 2010. And put it on display. The first year was fine. The second year, they asked for an extension because hundreds of thousands of people came to see the car. The car got bricked. The second team did not know how to handle the car. On any given day, when we hear about a bricked Roadster, people contact us. Part of the story sometimes is I took it to my body shop. They were supposed to keep it charged. They didn't. My car's now bricked. Body shops, repair shops. The problem is these shops don't realize, first of all, that the car needs a constant dose of electrons or it's going to eventually run out of juice, and then you have an expensive repair because you have to ship it to a company like ours to recover it.
Right.
The other problem they have is they think, well, let's take that extension cord and throw that on the car because the car's not near an outlet. It needs a 10-gauge extension cord, which is not common. When
Right.
you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy yourself an extension cord, if you're lucky, you may get a 14-gauge cord. Most likely, you're going to get 16-gauge. Those little orange ones, you know, they're about 1/4 of an inch in diameter. There's no way that's capable of charging a Tesla Roadster. So a number of cars get bricked because the storage is not adequate. So what we decided to do was to create a Tesla Roadster storage facility with 24/7 monitoring, with an open vehicle management system in each car. The OVMS basically talks to the car. It collects all of the state of charge data and other parameters from the car, and then sends that through the 4G network to both our servers, which in a control room now will be continuously monitored, and the customer's cell phone. So if there's anything going on with a car, both us and the customer gets alerted, and we can quickly solve the problem. Whether it's a tripped circuit breaker, it stopped charging, there's an electronics problem with the car. So we'll have a command center in this building, and what you're seeing there is off to the middle, slightly to the right, is where the offices are in this building. The rest of this building is going to be 3-tiered lifts for storing these Tesla Roadsters. There will be the equivalent of umbilical cords coming down from the ceiling, going to each car, keeping them continuously connected to power so that they can charge at their leisure or when they feel it's appropriate or it's necessary. In the command center, in the front section there, will be flat screens, and there will be staff. There will be 24/7 monitoring, continuously looking at every single car, and then, of course, alerts. If anything's going on, there'll be an audible alert. The customer gets an alert. The other thing that's unusual about this building is, if you notice the walls were block, they are now framed or furred with steel studs, and there is a very high R factor insulation going into the walls, and that will be drywalled. So the entire building will be drywalled, no exposed block. The floor is going to be an aggregate epoxy, one of those shiny things like we have at Gruber Motor Company, where you have a floor that's so durable you can drop a pipe wrench on the floor without damaging the floor. Clean, well kept. The ceiling will be, again, high R factor, and with scrim sheets, white scrim sheets, again, very reflective, with LED lighting. And if you notice the large piping that's running down through the building, one of the things that contributed to the fire was this was a building that was built before zoning codes mandated sprinkler systems in a building this size. It's like 8,200 feet, I think.
Yes.
And because we're now doing reconstruction, and because we want it, this now has a full city-fed sprinkler system in it. So that is fundamentally the new Gruber Motor Company storage facility, about 8,200 feet of storage for exotic EVs. And if enough interest is there, we're even thinking about a cigar lounge in the front, because we have an airport that's about a 1/4 mile to the north of us, within walking distance, and we feel that some of these owners may fly in to see their cars with their private jet, and when they get there, they might want some food and maybe a cigar lounge and some good scotch.
Absolutely. On TikTok, we have just a couple more comments. BMX Street Crew asks us, where is your shop located?
North Phoenix, Deer Valley Air Park, 7th Street and Deer Valley Road.
Yes. And then Highlander on YouTube, he says no.
Never
Never
the
reveal sunglass secret.
Well, we've been promising that, so I'm not sure we can hold to that.
It will need to be revealed at some point.
Well, we really appreciate all of you that join us for these Tesla Roadster podcasts. I have to tell you something else, too. We get some participation while the podcast is live. But the majority of participation occurs after these have been broadcast on our YouTube channel, Gruber Motors. That's when the viewer count begins to climb. That's when additional questions come in, either through email or posted on the video. And the reason we do this is we're beginning to realize that we're providing value to the community, and we're going to continue these.
We look forward to providing the value. We will be here next week for the EV podcast at 10 o'clock Mountain Time. The Communication Products podcast is going to be delayed by another week because of the holiday, but the Power Services podcast is Friday at 10. And then tomorrow you're going to be on with Jesse for the AI podcast.
And those of you that are interested in what is this AI all about? What is the impact? Should we be afraid of it? Are the robots going to take over? Am I going to lose my job? How do I integrate with humanoid robots? Will they go on break with me when we take a smoke break? All of those questions get answered in our AI podcast. And our goal with that podcast is to destigmatize some of the fears that are centered around this radical change, this disruption that we're in the middle of right now, and learning how to coexist with artificial intelligence.
So until next week, I wish you all the best. Happy holidays and hope you take care.
Thank you.